if you haven't met me and I haven't pitched you down pay, just so you know what I do, which will save me a lot of time in the events after this, so I don't have to pitch myself every 2 minutes. We are a partial payment and deferred payment solution for native Shopify. So what that means is, like, we all know buy now, pay later. It's like that without the loans part. So we let customers use their own credit cards to split payment for these high value products that typically suffer from really low conversions. So what you get is flexibility in payment and better conversion for merchants. And did I always think that I'd be building a company like this? Absolutely not. I have pivoted more times than I can count. I actually started in film school. I was a sound engineer actually here in Toronto for film and television for many years. Really fun, kind of repetitive. Ended up pivoting into IT security, more just from wanting to expose myself to new things, and didn't want to work 16 hours a day anymore. So found my way into Shopify, where I started the IT teams, founded some of the practices that they still use today, and moved into product management when I realized I really wanted to work in groups and think 10,000-foot view. And I thought that being a generalist was a weakness until I became a founder and realized, like, I had just built this toolkit of skills that I use for everything right now. I am the marketing, sales, IT, security, whatever person in the company, while my co-founder's building the app. So it's been extremely valuable, despite the world telling you that you have to specialize. And so there are plenty of talks that you're going to hear today, larger companies than mine telling you how they did it, right? And I'm kind of here to say that I take that stuff in, use it, but what you bring to the table is unique with your own unique perspective. And if I can give you anything in this talk, it's going to be some PM skills that maybe some of you have never experienced, never worked as a PM, and just a mindset shift for trying to find your own unique advantage in this space. And so I'm kind of splitting this talk up into 3 principles. Some of them are from Shopify, some of them are my own beliefs. First one being, finding your core and focusing, something that we kind of had in the backs of our heads at Shopify all the time as product teams. Then I want to talk a bit about, the long game. We've all heard Shopify wants to be a 100-year company. What does that mean? What does that take? And just give you some examples of trade-offs that you might have to make to get there. And lastly, the piece that's kind of a bit more of my personal belief is beyond frameworks that I'm going to share with you. It's more of using your lived experience to tell your own personal story. I think we do a lot to build a business, and we're all afraid of what AI might do to it. But I think there's one thing it can't take away, and that's who you are and what you've lived through. So I'll be sharing a story of a personal story of someone who built a business despite risks of getting thrown in jail. So with that, let's get into it. And so first principle is really, how many of you have heard this, like, Shopify principle? Maybe I shouldn't be giving this talk. Maybe someone at Shopify is going to be like, these were secrets. Anyways, something that we were told constantly, it's like #1 principle in this little cute handbook that I think I have in my bag, was build for what most merchants need most of the time. And so what that meant for Shopify was, we can't build everything. And so the core product that we offer in Shopify, the platform, has to scale sustainably and stay simple or get simpler over time. So that was figure out what most merchants need most of the time, build those in the core product, and everything else should be built in an extensible way for the ecosystem to take and fill those gaps, right? And so that is something that it's a great principle. It's hard to action on, and it takes some muscle. We used to do merchant visits all the time at Shopify, so we would take like our whole product team and go visit a merchant to see how they use the product, and basically just get a laundry list of feature requests from them. Tried to keep it focused, to just our product team, but it never really happened. It ended up being, like a laundry list of things you can't control. And so it was a great empathy building exercise, but it was really hard to feel like you're leaving there feeling focused and feeling like you can accomplish something. So this is kind of like the principle in the back of our head to say, this is one merchant in many, where is the delta that we need to actually solve for? And so, I don't know, how many app founders are here, just so I understand, okay. And, okay, great. So, I mean, I maybe this resonates with you that like, you get a ton of feature requests in and you're like, yeah, I'll do this. Oh yeah, you want that? Okay, great. Because you have no idea how to say no and you don't want to turn away business. And it kind of feels impossible, but I'm kind of telling you that that's fine at the beginning. You're gonna do that to find your own pathway and like the thing that's gonna serve you best, but like you need to get good at saying no within like your first couple years. It's like you need to step out of project mode and really look high level, and it's really hard to do, especially if you're like a solo builder or a small team. But yeah, that's what we did over the last year, and it's great perspective. So I want to share how I do that and how we kind of thought about it, which might just take you an hour to like really sit down and do. And that's like what we know as setting first an ideal customer profile. So we all know what this is, I think, but I just learned this way of like building an ICP that resonated with me, so I thought I'd share it. It's having an always statement, which is like a non-negotiable trait that your ideal customers must have for you to serve them. And a usually statement, which is like a common but flexible trait that sometimes is there, sometimes it's not, and it's not required. And this is really valuable because you have to be focused. You can't put everything in a statement like this. And what you can do afterwards is step back and like list an exhaustive list of these ICPs that you serve today. So like look at who has your app installed, who has higher retention, define these specific groups of people, and start asking yourself, who do I really need to understand well to stay alive today? And who do I need to start understanding to win tomorrow? And like that should be your guiding light to who's serving you well and who isn't. And so in this example, let's say this company has a focus of $10 million luxury brands that are usually in North America. And they're starting to realize that, yeah, they're the core revenue driver. That's the strategic importance to that specific ICP. And we're going to focus on them now. We're going to just like try to capture that market. And it may seem small, but like you doing that will give you that like foothold that you need to validate whether what you built is going to be extensible. Next, you're going to maybe see that you want to serve B2B automotive because you're getting these kinds of people in. Maybe they're churning, but you realize that there's like huge growth potential there, and you need to build X, Y, and Z to kind of like target them. Maybe that's your next, right? But in small teams, that can't be your now as well. And then you might see that there's people, boutique hat shops that, maybe are usually owner run, and you notice that they're churning constantly, they're low revenue. You have to put those into no fit. You have to not target these people. You have to not think about them as, lost opportunities. There's someone else that's going to be for them, right? And they're just going to drain you, and they're going to make your product dull. And what I mean by dull is they'll generalize it, right? And then you'll look like everything else, which is like the worst thing. And what this is going to give you is the knowledge of like where you need to get better, where you need to understand, where you need to build customer obsession or merchant obsession, so that you don't have to compete on price, because that is the worst way to do business. And to showcase this point further, here's where a 93-year-old brand started as well. I love Lego. I think it's 93 years old. Like Shopify is 20 something, I think now. So I look at these companies to see what they did well and what they can improve. And Ole Christensen was the founder back in the 1930s. He was like a carpenter, really focused on his craft. His wife passed away, and he had, I think, 3 or 4 kids that he had to take care of during the Great Depression. And he was looking for a product that would scale, that would get him a better, business model to sustain his family. And he had a really cool retrospective like years later where he basically said, like, I had this choice between continuing my craft and building ladders and ironing boards and all this stuff, or putting toys out of my head. And I'm glad, like, basically he chose the path of toys, which resonated really well with his audience, which was, parents who really wanted durable, affordable toys for their kids during the Depression. And they were usually mothers in Denmark in working class families. And this was just a really focused, not broad ICP that he started with. And fast forward 93 years, and you have all these footholds that they've built that are all orbiting around their core experience, right? You have, probably, how many of our adult fans of Lego here? Anyone? Yeah. Oh my goodness, there's way more than I thought. And that one's really cool because the next kind of exercise that I would encourage you to do once you really define your ICP is does your brand resonate? Does your pricing resonate with those people? And I think that's what they did really well. Every single time they took an ICP, like I said, it was an extension of their core narrative. We all have this attachment to Lego from childhood. They've been building this narrative our whole lives, right? And it's an emotionally driven narrative. It is one of the hardest things to do as a brand, right? Shopify, I would say, is not doing this. They're a tool, right? And people use a tool. But to get to this point, that takes time and dedication and focus. And so you can actually see that in their entire, all the areas of their company and how they project their messaging to the ICP that they serve, the channels that they use that might be different for different ICPs. Pricing as well is way more premium. And, they have time drops and, things for us millennials or whatever we are. And so, this is a really great exercise for you to do as well, to say, do I really line up? And am I really serving myself well by saying, hey, I am for you, and everything is tailored around you. And that is a stronger message than, yeah, I could do everything. I'm a Swiss Army knife. And so with that, it took 93 years for them to get here, and I think that leads really well into my next point, which is the long game, right? We are all in this, and I hope that we are all realize this is an endurance training event, not a sprint that you have to run as quickly as possible. If you're running a sprint, you will burn out. I don't know any other way around it. And like I said, Shopify's really on this as well. They really believe in the long game, and I think the way I think of it as well, and the way we kind of built things out at Shopify was, having adaptability, but doing features that serve that core customer that you've already defined in my previous slides really, really well today, filling the gaps, understanding what they need to be successful with you. That builds your competitive moat, and that builds better retention. Then what you need to do is you need to experiment for the people you want to win tomorrow. That's what adaptability is. The world is constantly changing. That's what I mean by endurance. You can never just stand still. And then, the hard one is, and I put infrastructure here, thinking, we're in the app space, but infrastructure can also be building your brand for long-term leverage, right? So what are the things and steps you take that might take years to actually see the outcome of? You need to be doing those things in tandem with these other things. And so I'll tell you a story about myself and when I was building infrastructure at Shopify. It was Hack Days 2021. I had 25 people that joined my project because I'm a huge nerd, and I did a let's solve pre-orders, and I used The Witcher 4 as an example, which is still not out. Super disappointed. Back in the day, I was on the subscriptions API team, and we were getting to the point where we had solved the core. We released the APIs, and we were filling the gaps. So we were working on that feature stuff, right? But we needed to start experimenting. We needed to start figuring out who else can we serve, where else can we extend, and where else can we get leverage long term for specific merchants that we serve. And so the big thing we learned during the subscriptions era was, online sales was changing from the selling strategy of buy now, pay now. The whole buy now, pay later space changed it. Rentals are coming to Shopify, try before you buy. Like all these things were changing and we needed something more flexible. And so yeah, we pitched this project, built an MVP in 3 days, which was great. Then the real work started. It was fitting it into Shopify. Yeah, things take time there because you have to understand, all the connected pieces that go into solving something at an infrastructure level. We chose a path to serving the ecosystem for this particular area because it is not something that fits most merchants most of the time. It's a unique selling strategy that many merchants use, but I would say it's under 20% of the group. And so the hardest part, and I'm sure you'll bump into this as you build, is scoping, quality, and time. So this thing still needs to ship in a reasonable amount of time. And so you need to make these trade-offs to slowly whittle it down to something that is still going to deliver value, but it's going to get out the door quickly. And future Diana is still suffering from trade-offs that I made in the past. So it is, I've de-scoped a lot of things that I suffer for today. But it wasn't perfect, but perfect means you never ship. And so it's a huge lesson that you need to take away from building something. Like you get really involved, and like I said, you're in this project mode for so long, you forget to step out and go, okay, like who is this really for? And is this worth the time that I'm putting in? And so, I reflect on this now, and I reflected on it obviously while I was building this presentation. And DownPay probably would have never existed. We've processed, I think, like 30 million in GMV for merchants on Shopify because this thing shipped when it did. I quit my job back in 2022 to do this thing all in. And it was just because I finally found out that, we released, like my previous team released the work. And so it's serving people already. And I think that's like where merchant obsession really like comes from. It's not chasing this shiny object. It's like staying focused and saying, okay, like am I building the thing that's gonna serve me well and serve my audience well? And it's that combination of features for people today, experiments, constant experiments for people tomorrow, and then like these leverage points of like this API is still being advanced, which is awesome. So it's not like you leave it all behind when you ship something. You will find spots to continue it if it matters, and if it matters to your customers. And so these are principles that I apply all the time, at least like once a year. Just promise me you'll do it once a year, just to get out of the project mode and be like, am I going down the right path? But this last bit is a little bit different. It's that belief that I kind of told you about, and it's a product manager thing. It's like going with your gut is kind of like what we used to call it, and what I mean by gut is like the things you've seen, the decisions you've made so far, the risks you took, the outcomes of those risks, and what it changed in your perspective and like how you build product. And we're all familiar with Toby's founder story. He had this DIY hacker mindset, and he got really good at learning to code through rewriting video games. And so, like, when he decided, I want to build a snowboarding store online, and nothing was cutting it, it didn't feel like a dead end. It felt more like a challenge for his skills that he already had set himself up with. And so I think that that's how some of the best products in the world are built, from that point of frustration or curiosity or simply just necessity. And so if that's not inspiration enough, I wanted to tell my personal story that I think hopefully shares how impactful it is to bring your uniqueness to whatever you're building to kind of like really differentiate yourself. And so let me take you back to a time in 1985. I'm from Romania, and Romania was ruled by a communist dictatorship in the 80s. And so the leader at the time was really inspired by North Korea. So he ended up actually limiting everything in the country, including people traveling, rations, you name it. That's the world that we lived in. Everything you did was tightly controlled. If you fall out of line, you get detained, you disappear. it was the Iron Curtain, right? And it was a really hard time for the people of Romania. And along with all that came like these sweeping bans. So Western media was banned, music was banned, books were banned. People were more isolated than ever from the rest of the world. It was like just a wall. And naturally, when this happens, an underground movement is formed to try and bring back the things that people lost. And so I want to introduce you to my dad. And so he is a rock and roller from his youth. He's a passionate member of this underground movement. And he grew up on Pink Floyd. I remember I just visited them this weekend when I was there in Hamilton. And he told me the story of like, he lent out his Wish You Were Here album, like his vinyl record. And the guy refused to give it back. And he just like got into a fist fight with this guy to get his record back. So like he was a very passionate guy when it came to this. And he also grew up on American action movies. And so he used these passions and skills to give people back something that they needed at the time. And so in that spirit and using his lived insight, he built a business. So he built a custom backpack that could hold a CRT TV, a VCR, and copies of action movies like Rambo, which is crazy. And yeah, I love the title of this. This time, he's fighting for his life. I'm like, it fits so well. But basically, he would take this all every night and go to secret locations, like in the city, where people would like staple like curtains and stuff on the windows so nobody could look in because this was super illegal. And he would have these viewing parties where he would pay, people would pay to like watch these movies with like a group of people that just started to feel, different. Like they saw luxury cars, they saw like food all over the tables. And like, keep in mind, this was a time in Romania when everybody had to like get stamps to get like bread every day. And like there was rations on everything. And so he was opening up this experience for people to live in a different way, even for a night. And he used what he knew, and he had an ideal customer profile: Romanian people who are starved for outside media, who usually aren't risk averse. And so, like I said, it was super illegal. He told me this weekend that he was like, I always had this fear in the back of my head that someone who was going to be at these viewings was going to be an informant, because there was a secret police that was kind of trying to take this down. And so he always took this risk every single night to just like make money, give people something and like feel connected. And this was his chance to reconnect Romania. And when you see this pain and you do something about it, I think that's like where your edge is built. And I know this is a very drastic example from us building, code, but I think there's something to take from it. The protests in Romania ended in like December 25th, I think, of 1989. And there's this amazing article that I'd encourage you to read. I will share slides later. But basically, these people had been part of this underground movement, had watched these films and had been exposed to it, that they started to fight back, against an oppressive system, because they could see that the world and like living could be different. And so, I think everything is really built on that endurance to keep going despite thinking that there's a dead end. There are no dead ends. And I think that the best Shopify apps start from that need and that drive and asking, why isn't this better? And to get there, I think, focus on a clear and very understood core experience that really solves a pain for people. From there, get real with yourself. This is an endurance game. You need to learn to say no to keep going so that you don't burn out. And finally, I implore you to use your lived insight, because I'm sure you all have your own unique stories that I would love to hear as well. And I think that that's really what defines merchant obsession. So use that as your compass and build from there. Thank you.